right now. Good way of our meeting.
I do. Oh, you have something to drink. That's good.
I won. Good. I won today. I've been there. It's cold. It feels warm. All right. With that, I'd like to call this meeting of the town board of the town of Northeast. Today is Tuesday, February 3rd. It's 5 o'clock. I would like to ask you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Tilly, could you conduct a roll call, please?
Supervisor Cannon,
Here.
Councilman Mayville,
Here.
Councilwoman Morrison,
Here.
Councilwoman Winkler,
Here.
Councilwoman Cole.
Here.
Okay. The agenda has been distributed to the board, and it's not a long and complicated one. I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you. With that, we are going to re-enter the public hearing which we began. And I won't belabor you with the long introduction that I did last time. Just to say that we are continuing the public hearing in an effort to make sure that we capture all of the public comment that is out there. Our intention is to keep this public hearing open. So we will continue it on after today and at least pick it up, I think, at our town board meeting. And we also have the process of the EAF, the Environmental Assessment Form Seeker, whatever it's called by two names, which is just an effort to trip me up. And we will be beginning that review today, but not completing it. So with that, I would like to ask for a motion to resume the public hearing.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And with that, the public hearing is open, and anybody who would like to speak, please just give your name, and the floor is yours. Mr. Covert.
Name's Ed Covert, and I live on Cooper Road. Last time I spoke before the board, one of the things I talked about was increasing the manpower when it comes to zoning and building. I've heard that it was a good idea, but there's a question of the cost of it. Where's the money gonna come from? Well, I've been thinking about that, and I might have an answer. It's my understanding that our town's fees for permits are most times well below that of what neighboring towns charge, excuse me. I think that since there's an overhaul push going on to equalize, there should be an equalization to match what our neighboring towns are doing in this area. I'm also wondering if fines are being imposed and collected by the town. Take the case of the illegal house on Cooper Road. The owner stood before a town board and admitted out loud that they had been violating the laws and rules for over a year and a half by having a family live in the house without a CO. Not being able to find out the exact amount of the fines, I just took some rough numbers, and here's what I came up with. A year and a half at $10 a day for a fine equals roughly $5,475. At $25 a day, it roughly comes out to $13,687. At $50 a day, it's roughly $27,375. I think any money left on the table in this time of expanding budgets and tax increase is just not right for the taxpayers. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Who else would like to make a comment on the proposed local law for the redoing of the zoning of the commercial district?
Chris, would you speak up a little bit? I can't hear you back here. There.
Yes, who else would like to make public comment on the proposed local law amending our commercial zoning?
I wrote a letter. I don't know if everybody had time to write it and read it, but I think there should be some more things allowed up where my gas station is on the boulevard. Because between the restrictions that are in the new zoning code added to the restrictions I already have from the previous gas company that I bought the property from, very limited to what I can do there. And, right now, Stone sells the sheds up there, which everybody seems to like. It seems to be very popular. And I can do that legally on the other end of the property. The other end of my property is in the village, and that's general business, but it's a little tight down there. It just looks better where it is. Stone has fixed everything up so nice up there. It used to look pretty rough. So I just wanted to have a few more things that are allowable on that property. The restrictions from the gas company, they'll last for 30 years. And if anything ever happens to me, like I said in the letter, I'm sure my family will probably not keep a museum there. They'll probably want to do something that produces income.
Thank you very much. Who else? Yes.
So Joanne Scasso, which
Yeah.
of course is Stone's mom, with the shed idea. But when I had looked at the zoning before, and we have to think about what the property looked like before he was there and before Rob Cooper, and the water running down from Trailer Place, et cetera, I think that we have to give some leeway to the people that are constantly improving the area, making it look better, trying to make it look better. Maybe if the kid was given, or Rob was given some type of adjustment or easement or something to that property, that he could put up a stone wall. Maybe the sheds aren't great looking, but if we all remember what the property looked like before that, it was really bad. Does anyone remember? There were tow trucks and cars and abandoned fire trucks and everything on that piece of property. So we have to think that, you know, our younger generation trying to do something, maybe, you know, we don't bury all this stuff all the time. Thank you.
I agree.
No, right here, no outdoor
Any-
equipment
yeah.
or accessory sheds was added to the,
Anyone else would
Plan.
like to make further comment? Floor is yours.
Hi, Karen Jacobson. So I'm just wondering what would be allowed on that piece of property? I can check the zoning.
So tonight, just to make sure that we all understand it, this is a public hearing for you to
Mhm,
give us your input.
right. I'm just
at this
responding
point.
to you.
Yeah.
And that's questions.
Okay. Oh, you can't ask questions.
Yes,
I'd like to
sir.
say something. I'm Jay Scasso, Stone's father, and, you know, for people like Rob and I and other board members who have lived here our whole lives, and we remember Millerton growing up with 5 bars and a movie theater that had X-rated movies. That was our childhood here. The town looks beautiful. It's come a long ways. We've got great restaurants. We've got shops, we're business, but we've always been a working man's weekender town. We're not like other towns. That's why everybody comes to Millerton. Shops at Agway, shops. We need to open things up a little bit for young people that want to stay here. We can't afford to stay here. And you gotta think outside the box or trying to keep young people in our town, because who's gonna stay here? Who's gonna do the work?
Thank you. All right. Who else? Mr. Downey.
My name is Ed Downey, and after having been away from Millerton for about 10 years in education and in service, I had the good fortune of coming back here in the early 1970s and served on the first comprehensive planning committee. I also had the privilege of being on the most recent one. And it's from that experience, I wanted to share with you some thoughts and perspectives on how to approach this very difficult process that you're in now, which is how to adopt the zoning law. The first thing is really a suggestion of improving a section of the zoning law that's here. And it's not something, fortunately, the good news is it's something we've done before. And it's introducing the various sections where there are, which are followed by a series of regulations with two types of narratives. One is called a legislative finding or a statement of legislative finding. The other is a purpose clause. As I say, we've done this before. In the late 1980s, when Mary Lyman was supervisor, the town and the village had together engaged in a planning process to improve housing opportunities in the community. And out of that, there was some legislation developed by the consultants, and each section of the proposed legislation was introduced with a legislative findings section and a purpose section. And there's really sort of two functions of that. One is basically a statement of the relevant facts that exist that are leading the town to undertake a particular suggestion on another zone. And the second is the purpose section, and that's an expression of the intent. What is the town trying to accomplish? So you talk about what's going on at the moment, and then you talk about what you want to accomplish with your zoning law. And if you're sometime when you take a look at your town code, an example of this is section 180-60. And this was that legislation I spoke about that was done in the 1980s. And that particular piece of legislation actually enabled the town to receive the Henry Heisenberg Award from the New York State Planning Federation. And that's an award that's given, one is given each year for what's considered outstanding efforts in planning. The town of Northeast got this in the 1980s. So it is possible to do this. I have some suggestions. I'll be happy to talk to people about it afterwards, but that's something I would encourage you to do. It's really the section specifically that I'm referring to is currently it's page 35 of the zoning law, the draft that I have, but it relates, it's the beginning of a section called zoning districts, locations and purposes. And so I would encourage you to consider doing that in a more detailed way, and I would refer you to that section of the town code that was adopted in the 1980s to see how that's approached. The second thing I want to sort of leave with you is that I think one of the things that I recognized from having thought about planning a lot of different ways, including being in your situation you're in, to have to enact it, is that it's a little, one thing that's unusual about land use law and zoning is that the constituency for that is not quite the same as the constituency that you are most usually dealing with. Let me give you an example of what I mean. When you pass your budget each year, you know that next year people are going to have to be paying a certain amount of money. Your constituency is those folks who are going to be living there the next year. You know, when you purchase a highway, piece of highway equipment, that you're going to borrow a certain amount of money that's going to be amortized over maybe 5 years. And that's a constituency that's here today. What's unusual about zoning is the constituency for it.
And you just hit the 5-minute mark, so
Okay.
if you want to finish that.
I'll be happy to do it. I'm just about finished.
Okay.
Is that the constituency is often people who are going to live here 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And I'll just give you one example. Roton Farm subdivision was being adopted roughly the time that I was on the planning board. It's in the early 1970s. There are still vacant lots in that subdivision. And they're not ones owned by the owners next door. That's how long the impact of the zoning decision can take to action. So I leave that with you. There is a constituency out there to think of as well as the community.
Thank you. Any further comment? Anyone else have further thoughts?
Sorry, I'm Kevin Webb and Lark moved here. I don't think there's any other seats. I just made a brief comment last meeting, and I just wanted to follow up on just one element of the revisions related to the ADU revision. It's the new section requires driveway access to the ADU shall be the same for the principal dwelling, and there shall not be a separate or second street curb cut. And I totally get the spirit of that, and I think it makes sense. I just wanted to flag that I've personally been thinking about putting ADU on my property for my parents in the future. I know a lot of people might consider something like that, and I probably don't have the only unusual lot configuration in the town, and I don't think personally for me that there is a way to do that without a second curb cut. And so just adding some softening language, to the extent practicable, something along those lines might save effort and, potential variances in the future if, again, that language is softened a little bit to accommodate unusual configurations that might require it. But again, like I said last time, in general, I'm very supportive of the work you guys are doing. So thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Chair for this. Can we put a chair? Like,
Do we have chairs?
I have one.
Yeah.
We can give you a
Yeah.
chair. Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Another full house. Anyone else? No.
So on January.
Do you want to give your name?
Tyler Graham.
Yeah, thank you.
On January 23rd, I got an email from our town supervisor about oncoming storm. But he didn't bother to send the citizens an email that they redlined these zoning changes. It's my opinion that the supervisor's job isn't to keep us updated about the weather, but it's to communicate clearly in plain language about what's being changed to our zoning. On November 18th, right before the holiday season, the town dropped 191 pages of zoning on us, with 40-some pages of the environmental review, and scheduled the public comments for January 8th. This was during everyone's busiest time of the year, and it's obvious that when things are released this way, it's not in the spirit of transparency. The town has never provided a red line comparison to our existing code. Last week, we finally got redlining, but it was only between the two drafts. It's meaningless for public participation. Without showing what's changing from our current law and why it's changing, the entire process collapses. No citizens understand why something is changing because it was never explained. And that's not our fault, it's the board's fault. And if the public can't understand what's changing and why, the county can't approve this. The public noticed that primarily non-residential. That wasn't true. The zoning review committee repeatedly stated that residential was not in their lane. Yet this board rewrote residential on their own, adding ADUs to every single family home in town. That's not primarily non-residential. Then there's the lighting code. Our current code has none, essentially, but anyone can go to Southampton's website right now and compare our new proposed lighting code to theirs. Our new lighting code is literally cut and pasted from Southampton, which is one of the most expensive zip codes in the United States of America. So there's this one story, which is that we've had 90 meetings, and then the reality is that we've also cut and pasted code from other towns. So volunteers, working for 90 meetings, which is impressive and much appreciated, it doesn't equal transparency unless all of us are attending those meetings. This is a flawed process with varied timelines, false descriptions, plagiarized code, and zero explanation of actual changes to our existing law. It's a textbook recipe for this just ending in litigation. What I believe needs to happen is that the residents should get a red line document showing the changes from the current code to what's actually being proposed now, and then provide plain language summaries as to why those changes are happening. Then residents need to have the time to review those materials. And any vote should be tabled until that's done. It's just basic transparency. There are national standards for this process, and this town has followed none of them.
Thank you. Who else? Yes.
Bill Kish. So I was one of those volunteers who sat through those 90 meetings, and contributed to those 90 meetings and put a lot of work into the preparation for those meetings. If each one of those meetings lasted an hour and a half, I probably prepared 3 hours for them. So think about that times the number of people in the committee and how much work was put in. I'd like to offer a few comments from the perspective of someone who was on that committee. First of all, I'd like to say that I agree with some of the comments that I heard tonight. I think that we have not done a good job as a town in terms of enforcing our existing zoning. I think that's a disservice to the people of the town, and it's a disservice to the people who worked on the zoning and the people who have to implement the zoning, i.e. the planning board and the zoning board of appeals. Why would anybody volunteer for the planning board if the agreements that they come up with the applicants don't have some enforcement behind it? I also agree that Millerton's historic character has not been a place for people to go and buy, $500 sneakers. It's been a place where, unlike the surrounding towns like Sharon and Lakeville and Salisbury, has been a place where working people actually have small businesses, they have small industries, and I think that's really important to recognize. It's part of what's in our comprehensive plan, and it's part of what the zoning review committee tried to implement. And so that's one of the reasons why I want to talk about what I observed at the last meeting, where the comments were examined and reviewed. At that last meeting, a few people mentioned, why not add more uses? And that's something that we hear tonight. This piece of property or this district could use more uses. And the board was very receptive to that. As a matter of fact, they were so receptive to that they said, why don't we just, add all the uses that are allowed in the Boulevard District over into the Irondale Business District. But what that's doing is that's taking in 10 minutes, the work that probably took a month of real-time time for people to hash it out, to research it, to draft it, and just overturn that in 10 minutes. The reason why the Boulevard District is mostly retail and restaurants and things like that is because it's supposed to be, according to the comprehensive plan, the walking commercial district of town, an extension of the village. It says right in the comprehensive plan. If that's the case, where are we going to put these other types of businesses? Irondale Business seemed to be the right place to put it. It's on Route 22. It has great access for vehicular traffic, not great access for pedestrians. So that's why we set that aside. When you start commingling these things, now you make it harder for everybody, because we really want to build out the retail and the restaurants and stuff like that over there. We don't want to be competing with that other area. And that other area shouldn't have to be a situation where somebody wants to open an auto body shop, but the next door neighbor who opened up a cafe comes here to the meeting and says, I just spent $5 million on my cafe. I don't want an auto body shop. That's why we did that. So please consider that.
Bill, you're right up against 5 minutes.
Okay.
You want to wrap it up, or
Wrap up
when we
is-
finish, we will
Yeah.
take further comments?
I disagree with one thing that I heard, which is that it was wrong to plagiarize the Southampton lighting code. It's not plagiarizing. All that stuff is in the public domain, and anybody who asked would have known that that was language that we took from the Southampton. We had 4 or 5 example lighting laws presented to us. We reviewed them, and we agreed that that was the best one. That saves money. If we don't have to have an attorney or a consultant write that code because somebody else like Southampton, who has a ton of money, paid those expensive people, and it's good code, we should use it. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else?
Henry Smedley. At the last meeting, I brought up my concerns that parking garages could only be underground. And unless I missed it, I didn't see any revisions in the red line.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, well, our plan today is to we will be keeping this hearing open. So there's further time for people to review the zoning changes and come back to us. And what I would like to do now is to ask for a motion to continue the hearing until our board meeting on, which is next week, I believe the 12th. And I would entertain a motion to continue the hearing until February 12th. Let's not do it at 5 minutes after 7, which was the mistake we made the last time. Why don't we, because we have other business that we're going to need to do, why don't we continue it at 7:15? Does that sound fair? What do you think, 7:20? Yeah,
7:20, maybe
7:20?
Yeah, sounds
All
like a
right.
good number.
So 7:20 on Thursday, February 12th.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, thank you. That completes the public hearing portion of this meeting. We're now going to talk, which you're very welcome to stay for, to start a discussion with our attorney about the EAF or SECRA. It's a process where it's the long form of SECRA, which we'll be going through. And Warren, why don't you take it away? Wait 1 second.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know how hard this is.
Okay.
Okay, so, here is the State Environmental Quality Review Act. I have a little bit of frog in my throat, so bear with me.
We got plenty of water. We're all getting a little croaky this time of year.
And there are several types of actions. There are 3 essential actions under seeker. There's a type 1 action, which is an action that most likely requires environmental review and possibly preparation of a draft environmental impact statement. Type 1 actions very often result in significant impacts to the community. Then there's a unlisted action, which is every other action that it's not defined as a type 1 action under seeker. And then there's what's known as a type 2 action, which is exempt from any environmental review. This is a rezoning or legislative process to amend the zoning law. So it falls into the category of a type 1 action because of the scope of the action. But we're only in this action changing the code, the laws, the zoning code for the town. We are not dealing with a site-specific project. So the environmental review for an amendment to your zoning law is a little bit different as a type 1 action than a type 1 action where someone's coming in and wants to do a gravel mine, imposing factory, or something like of that sort. So what our consultant did, our planning consultant did, was prepare a part 1 of the full environmental assessment form, which is required for all type 1 actions. The difficulty in utilizing the standard type 1 form is that because this is just a change to the code, not a site-specific project, much of the environmental assessment form doesn't apply to this project. So what our consultant did was filled out a portion of the type 1 of the part of the full environmental assessment form, which just described the nature of the problem. Other boards which have some interest in the project. We're the only what's known as the involved agency, because only the town board is going to be passing this legislation. Doesn't go to the planning board for its review. But we identified the town board as the principal lead agency, and also identified the zoning review committee and Dutchess County Planning as interested agencies. They're not involved because they don't have any decision-making powers over the and then there's just questions in here which were answered, probably of little interest to the public, about the town and all of the districts that are affected by the zoning legislation. And there are a number of them. And then it stops on page 3 of a 13-page form, and that's all you have to fill out for this project. So at some point, we're going to have our supervisor sign part one of the EAF, and that will complete that process. The second area of concern in the environmental review is the part two, which is the identification of potential project impacts. And this form has a category of impacts for which the lead agency, in this case the town board, needs to answer whether the proposed project may have that particular impact. And our consultant in draft form, you have to adopt this, went through the part two, and I'll just go over the sections of the part two. The first is the impact on land, and the question is, the proposed action may involve construction or physical alteration of the land surface of the proposed site. Again, you can see this is geared towards a specific proposal, so the answer for this is no in the context of the zoning revision. The second category is impacts on surface water. The proposed action may affect one or more wetlands or other surface water bodies, streams, rivers, ponds, or lake. Again, the answer is no. If the answer was yes, you would have to go to questions, sub-questions underneath that category to determine if the impact is none or small, or if it's a moderate to large impact. If you identify any moderate to large impacts, you have to do further seeker review. So once you answer no, you don't have to go into the individual questions. The next category is impact on groundwater. The proposed action may result in new or additional use of groundwater, or may have the potential to introduce contaminants to groundwater or an aquifer. Again, this action will not. Next, paragraph 5 is impact on flooding. The question was, the proposed action may result in development on lands subject to flooding. Again, the adoption of this law will not have that impact, so the answer is no. And impacts on air. The proposed action may include a state-regulated air emission source. Again, this law does not include that, so the answer was no. The next impact is impact on plants and animals. Proposed action may result in a loss of flora or fauna. Again, no, so we don't have to go into the subcategories on that. Again, this is subject to your approval. This is what our consultant advised to how to fill this out. Number 8 is impact on agricultural resources. Again, the answer was no. This action will not have that impact. The next is impact on aesthetic resources. The answer was no for the same reasoning. Number 10, impact on historic and archaeological resources. The answer was no. Actually, when you adopt a local law, the environmental review process is a lot easier than when you're dealing with a specific project. Number 11, the impact on open space and recreation. The answer was no. Proposed action may result in the loss of recreational opportunities or reduction in open space resource as designated in any adopted municipal open space plan. That's no. Number 12, impact on critical environmental areas. Proposed action may be located within or adjacent to a critical environmental area, CEA, and the answer to that is no. The next section, number 14, is impact on energy. And the question was, the proposed action may cause an increase in the use of any form of energy. Again, this law will not have that impact. Number 15, impact on noise, odor, and light. And the answer for that was also no. And the last category, I think that's, no, it's not. 16, impact on human health. The proposed action may have an impact on human health from exposure to new or existing sources of contamination. The answer to that was no. Recommended answer to that was no. 17, the action consistency with the community plan and proposed action. Question is, proposed action is not consistent with adopted land use plans, but this certainly was because it was developed in conjunction with the comprehensive plan for the town and the village. Number 18, proposed consistency with community character, and it's the proposed action is inconsistent with existing community character. It certainly is not the passage of this law. So the answer to that was no. Just take note of the fact that during the public hearing process, which has gone on for a while, I don't remember receiving any, the town board receiving any comments that this local law will result in significant environmental impacts. But you should note that once the law goes into effect and it's adopted, every time a property owner comes in for site-specific development of a piece of property, then a much more elaborate, time-consuming, involved environmental review is conducted of each one of those actions. Because we didn't identify, and I should note also that, did I say it? I don't remember anybody from the public, yes, especially any environmental concerns. Sometimes we get a lot of concerns, projects that are before the public. So if we had identified one or more potentially large impacts, we would have been required to go to a Part 3 analysis, which is the third section of the full EAF. We call it the full EAF narrative for type 1 actions, in which the significance of those large impacts is determined. And if the lead agency determines that an impact is potentially large, but it's not significant, then it doesn't require an environmental impact statement. But that has very little relevance to what we're doing in this case, because we didn't identify any potentially large impacts in any of those sections. We did do a narrative, which I think is quite good. And I will try to go through the narrative with you. It could be that I'm going to read the whole thing, so bear with me.
Could we, I mean, these are the planner's suggestions.
Correct.
Suggested responses to this. One of the things that I would like is for us all to have copies of this so that we can go through it and make our own assessments.
Do you have, because I distributed copies of.
I think we all have access to it,
Right.
But I think I'd like to make sure that we send out a specific individual copy to each member. It was part of, I think, of a larger.
Okay, so we won't adopt the Part 1 and Part 2 tonight, but we'll supply that to the board members and we can revisit this next time.
No, I think this is a good introduction to it so that we know what we're looking at.
Yeah.
And we can go through each of those 18 different things and come up with our own conclusions.
Yeah, I mean, that's your job.
Yeah.
You shouldn't necessarily accept what the consultants have provided for you. This is just a recommendation of our consultants in working with the committee. So I don't know whether you want me to read the section on the zoning amendment process for the public so they understand what we went through. I'm happy to do that. It's a section of the narrative, which I think is pretty good. And it's on page 4. And it starts with the zoning review committee. The town of Northeast Town Board appointed a zoning review committee in 2020 following the adoption of the 2009 joint Northeast.
2019.
What did I say? 2019. Sorry.
a joint Northeast Militant Comprehensive Plan. While the town and the village have separate zoning laws, Northeast ZRC acknowledged that it was aware of the importance and interdependency that exists between the two communities. Two of the three Northeast non-residential commercial zoning districts are located immediately adjacent to the village. As such, it was important to also include in the membership of the zoning review committee residents from both the town and the village. Town board appointed as chair Edith Greenwood, who's sitting in the back of me, who previously chaired the Joint Comprehensive Plan Update Committee. In addition, there were 8 other individuals appointed to the committee, I'm going to skip some things here. The 5 active members, in addition to the chair, also had extensive experience in the community with a focus on land use, and they included Edith Del Culver, the chair of the Northeast Planning Board, Bill Kish, former chair and current member of the Northeast Planning Board, Julie Schroeder, the longstanding chair of the Northeast ZBA, Edward Downey, who spoke tonight, former supervisor, former member of the Northeast Planning Board, and resident of the village Milliken, and Dave Sherman. I don't know if you see that. There he is. No, he's not here. Also, former town supervisor and former member of the Northeast Planning Board, and the resident of the village of Milliken. The ZRC was assisted and advised throughout its process by William Agrester, AICP MLA Director of Planning for Matthew D. Rudikoff Associates as its planning consultant, and Mr. Agrester is well experienced with the town as it assisted the Planning Board and the Zoning Board of Appeals with the review and processing of many land use applications over the last 3 decades. There were initially, the ZRC meetings were scheduled once a month. The schedule soon shifted to twice a month, and later additional work sessions meetings were included where the planning consultant did not attend. In total, there were 90 meetings conveyed between October 2020 and November 2024, which culminated in the draft of the updated and enhanced zoning regulation amendments, which primarily focused on the non-residential zoning district, which were presented to the town board for its consideration. Each ZRC meeting included a posted agenda followed by meeting minutes. The ZRC chair developed a distribution list of interested parties and sent out the agenda directly to those who expressed an interest in being kept informed. All regular meetings included on the agenda a public comment and community input at the end of each meeting, which input was also recorded in the meeting minutes. The issues most often addressed in public comments related to housing, how to best lay out the boulevard parcels, sidewalks, allowing flexibility regarding commercial and residential spaces, environmental concerns, and the signs, among others. Members of the committee often focused on providing flexibility in the code, yet stressed the need for appropriate guidelines for the special permit and site plan approval process. Members acknowledged the importance of definitions, which were worked on extensively during the ZRC review process. Regarding housing, the ZRC also made a separate recommendation that active housing committee for the Northeast be established by the town board, which is a good idea. In addition, the ZRC reached out to Dutchess County on 2 occasions. The first was in November of 2020, when the committee asked for comments on the draft changes to the sections regulating signs, a very problematic area of any zoning code. And working with a lawyer in the Dutchess County Planning Department, the ZRC developed a more legally compliant set of sign standards. There have been some decisions, primarily a decision from the Supreme Court of the United States, which has caused a lot of concern for local municipalities and their sign regulations as to whether those regulations are illegally dealing with free speech. And a lot of towns have grappled with changing their zoning codes accordingly, and it's not an easy process. In January of 2023, the town retained Whitman, Osterman and Hanna LLC to act as special counsel to the ZRC. And Paul Van Cott was assigned to work with the ZRC in reviewing the draft from a legal perspective. At the suggestion of Dutchess County Planning, the ZRC reached out a second time in May of 2024 and requested a preliminary review of the entire working draft as of that date. County Planning responded in June of 2024 with several comments and attended meetings with the ZRC on July 1st, 2024. To go over their comments, Dutchess County Planning provided useful input, much of which has been incorporated into the code. The ZRC was also encouraged by County Planning to allow greater density for housing. In the commercial districts, we had suggested a change to maximum off-street parking standards rather than traditional minimum parking standards. However, the ZRC was concerned about the effectiveness of outside the core of the village, effectiveness of maximum parking standards, particularly in a town with no public transit and little or no public parking outside the core of the village. Instead, the ZRC, with the help of the planning consultant, developed several options for applying alternative parking standards to an application aimed at reducing the number of off-street parking spaces and increasing internal connectivity between abutting properties through common access and shared parking agreements. On November 10th, 2024, the ZRC recommended draft was turned over to the town board for their acceptance and adoption, thereby concluding the work of the ZRC. After that, the town board conducted its own public hearings and workshop meetings to go over what was presented to them by the ZRC. And the last such public hearing was conducted tonight. The last one hopefully being at the next town board meeting, but we'll see. The town board plans to name in the future a new zoning review committee to address the remaining areas of the zoning regulations, particularly the residential districts and land conservation district. Let me just see if there's. The next section in the narrative discusses the town board and the recommended changes that the town board made in the plan, and that's on page 6. I don't think I have to go over that, but that's where it's located. And then there's a section on the alignment and consistency with the 2019 comprehensive plan. And of course, the analysis there concludes that it is totally consistent with the comprehensive plan. And rather than me reading it, when we distribute it, people can look at that section that runs from page 6 to page 10, culminating in seeker compliance. I think I already covered seeker sufficiently for the meeting. It's also discussed on page 10. I'm just going to read this one section. The proposed zoning amendments provide updated regulatory land use standards and requirements intended to achieve and implement many of the zoning and land use recommendations of the comprehensive plan as vision and goals, with a particular focus on non-residential zoning district and the boulevard district. The 2019 comprehensive plan was adopted by the town board following completion of a generic environmental impact statement. According to the environmental review completed for the 2019 comprehensive plan, entitled "Adoption of the Plan Will Help the Town and Village Reduce or Mitigate Environmental Impacts." Implementation of the recommendations will allow for effective land use regulations, careful and comprehensive development project reviews and transformative recognition of the importance of the town and the village's environmental resources. The town and the village view the joint plan as to ensure resiliency, sustainability, and protection of the Northeast and Milton environment. As such, adoption of proposed zoning amendments implementing many of the plan's goals and recommendations is consistent with the generic environmental impact statement findings clearly established in 2019. Like the 2019 comprehensive plan, the proposed zoning amendments can be viewed as a mitigation measure against prospective impacts of future activities and development on resources within the town. The amendments strive to guide development in a manner that will protect and enhance the unique features of the town as well as its natural resources, community character, and quality of life, while improving the town's economic viability. As such, consistent with the secret findings in the 2019 comprehensive plan, implementation of the comprehensive plan, specifically adoption of the updated land use regulations, will have a beneficial impact on the environment, not an adverse impact on the environment. Potential impacts resulting from subsequent actions or future development activities in accordance with the updated zoning standards are at the present time too speculative and undefined to be analyzed here. Future land use actions proposed in accordance with and pursuant to the updated zoning standards and requirements will be subject to site and specific seeker evaluations at the time permits are sought to implement those future land use actions, each requiring a separate environmental review, including the assessment of associated potential impacts under seeker. Those analyses will be reviewed and weighed against the policy established in the comprehensive plan as implemented by the updated zoning regulations. Here's a last section, the seeker, which concludes that the environmental assessment form and regarding the completion of the FEAF Part 1 for the proposed legislative action, the responses to D and E are not applicable because the proposed action, as I stated, was a legislative action consisting of the adoption of a local law. As such, the proposed action does not involve any changes, physical changes or development activities pertinent to the questions D and E. And this goes on to page 13, for more clarification of that. Just explaining why we're not going through an impact analysis, specific impact analysis in accordance with this plan. I don't think I need to read part 1 of the FEAF narrative, which explains the changes and the effect on the zoning map district and how they've changed as a result of this proposed amendment. And those are listed on page 1 through page 2. And also there is an analysis on page 2 to page 3 of the impact or the effect of the zoning regulations, which primarily affect and update the standards of the non-residential zoning districts. Standards for the residential zoning districts are also included, but to a lesser extent. And this will be envisioned in the phase 2 of the review of the and changes to the zoning code, which hopefully will start the process soon and be completed in an expeditious manner. And that the rest of what that section could be read. I don't have to read it to you. I think it's a pretty good analysis. Again, there weren't a lot of comments about the environmental impacts of the changes in the local law, but we still could hear from the public on that at the next meeting. And when you review the FEIF in more detail, and it's well prepared. You can make your own conclusions and determine by a vote at the, we can do it at the next meeting, if you like, whether you're going to issue accept the full, do you think that's time enough?
I thought you said, Warren, that we could not complete this until after the public hearing has been concluded.
No, actually, I did send you an email on that.
Okay.
But you can't adopt the zoning code until the environmental review process is completed. So this has to be done before a final vote on the zoning code. But you can do your environmental assessment at any time in the process. Some boards do it right at the inception of the project, which I have not found to be a good idea, because you don't get the advantage of public comment and public hearings and analysis of the project. So the sounder theory is to wait on doing your environmental review until you've conducted your public hearings, you've gotten all the analysis from your consultants and the committee and the public. And then before you make a final vote on whether to adopt a local law that incorporates all of this, you'll make your final secret determination, and I will have a resolution for you to pass at that time that's consistent with the requirements of the law. So,
do you anticipate that we're going to need a special meeting to go through the EAF? I mean, just that one section that you read is pretty substantial.
Yeah,
If we start
it's up to the
picking
board.
this apart.
Yeah, I
we
mean,
could be
it's
here for a while.
If you think that you need more time to go through it, we can defer it to March.
Yeah, no, I would like the board to feel that they've had time to, to go through it. Thoroughly.
It's taken this a long time. It's I thought pretty efficient process. Sometimes these take even longer. I've experienced that. So another month it's always better to err on the side of caution on these things.
Yeah.
And every time you have a public hearing or adjourn it, and people send it, there's another comment that you may want to consider. So we can defer the environmental review. We'll have them continue the public hearing next week, but finish the environmental review at whatever the March meeting date is. So, and then, maybe at that point,
we'll hopefully be able to come back with, that I think this should give the board at least some time before the meeting next week to look at the EAF.
Yes.
And start to make their judgments about it.
Right. I think we made it available to the public too.
I believe so.
The public
I just don't have it right in front of me.
And we're encouraging the public, if they have environmental concerns, express those concerns at this meeting.
Well, the public hearing will be open at our next meeting. Yes, ma'am.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So is when those questions are responded to, like no, because it's very broad, is the assumption that it just is determined site by site for land use, or is there a notation to say that no, however, like the footnote, that it is based on site plan approval?
Yeah, I mean, we have that in the narrative. It's not
right, I heard you say that.
It's not in the part 2 analysis. But this has been a subject of some litigation, in the realm of zoning litigation. And I've handled a couple of these cases where, the question is, when you're passing a local law of this sort to amend your zoning code, does that require that you have to identify every potential environmental impact? It could be an overwhelming task because you don't have anything to work with. So the courts have agreed and got successful decision in Dutchess County on a couple of those cases But in cases like this, it's, as long as you go through the process, it's okay to defer site-specific analysis until you have the zoning regulation. But you do have to go through the environmental review process, which we have, because there are certain amendments to zoning codes which do give rise to concerns about the impacts of that particular rezoning. And in those cases, the courts encourage you to do your environmental analysis then. But it's basically most courts now agree that, and certainly DEC agrees in the way they've shortened the environmental assessment form, where you don't have to go through all 13 pages for a zoning amendment as you would in a site-specific project, which has all kinds of information and data about the environment. So, but if you have any particular concerns, next time is the time to raise those so that we address them.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
And that's all I have.
Yep.
I think that's all I'm
With
able
that-
to. I just wanted to make a comment on it was questions about zoning enforcement. None of this has to do with zoning enforcement. I just want people to understand we're not ignoring the issue of zoning enforcement.
Yeah.
It just is not. It's not part of this process. That's a separate process that involves determinations made by our zoning administrator and zoning enforcement officer about the enforcement of zoning, but there's nothing in here that we can do to make sure those enforced.
Understand that. But we listen and we hear, and we're the town board, and these are all things that we can deal with in other forms.
Right. And also, there's nothing plagiaristic, if that's a word, I don't know if it is, about taking sections of codes from other municipalities.
I mean,
We do that all the
it
time.
happens all the time.
in zoning.
Oh, yeah.
And basically, when towns see other towns that have done something that is viewed as really, you've improved the state of the art.
Whenever I have to do a zoning amendment, I always contact the Association of Towns and get copies of zoning codes that relate to what we're doing from other jurisdictions.
The Association of Towns actually has solicited code from different towns and then distributes it saying, look at this. This is actually pretty good. So
I'm doing a
anyway, I
local
think
law
we're-
today, and I just got a package from Association of Towns to help me develop that
Yeah.
local law in other towns. So, nothing wrong with that.
All right, well, with that, we will continue on next week, this journey. And Thursday night.
I'm sorry, will we get a copy with the consultant's comments?
You mean the FEIS?
Yeah.
Yeah, it has them in.
Yeah, you should get a copy of this.
Yes, you will.
And when will?
Okay.
It's
Tomorrow.
Philly, can you give that to everybody?
It's on the
Tomorrow.
website, so
It's already on there?
I believe it's on the website.
Well, it was.
Yeah, I think it's also on the
don't know where it
website.
is now.
Yeah, I can find it.
It's under the zoning,
Town
under
of
zoning
Northeast, yeah. Let me find
board
it.
departments. Let's see if you see it under this.
I think it was given, actually, not recently. It was a while ago.
When we
one
scheduled
of
the original
first-
public hearing,
Yeah,
I included the FEAF.
yeah, that was given to us for the
So it's
November.
not just a blank form, it has our consultants.
Yeah, it's got, I'm just saying there are certain sections which we
Okay,
haven't
look under
filled out.
departments, zoning. Okay. I'll find
You'll get
CBA,
it. I will make
CRC,
sure that
it's-
you get it tomorrow.
Yeah.
So much paper goes by us that it, if it's like 3 months ago, it is.
Yes.
It's, we may know that we've got it, but it's somewhere on the computer.
Yeah.
It is-
Anyway, we'll get out,
it
you'll
is-
get a fresh copy tomorrow.
And if anybody has any questions between now and the next meeting and the next meeting, just email me and I'll try to answer them.
It is published under boards and committees.
Yeah.
Zoning Review Committee, and then documents. And then it's the second one that's called TBNE Zoning FEAF, dated 10/30/2025. So it is there for the public to view it also. That might have been before you actually were on the board. So that's why you didn't get
Most things are.
you didn't get the email.
That's why you didn't get it. Now you got it.
All right, well, with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
Favor?
Aye.
Adjourn. Thank you. See you next Thursday.
Anybody else?
We can't make a decision, like without, you can talk separately, yeah, but yes, I agree.